Hi, yeah. I've been working on a project called Stupid Cities. Thank you to Bath Digital Festival, firstly, and all of the sponsors and partners who've been involved with it. It's always fantastic to be a part of. The project I'm talking about is something called Stupid Cities. I'm co-director, along with Ruby Saint, of a CIC called Little Lost Robot that's really interested in marginalized groups and how technology and creativity can be used to challenge and I think kind of take ownership slightly of these different types of tools and technology we have to try and create new narratives and new voices. The Stupid Cities project is funded by Bristol Bath Creative R&D, and also myself and Ruby are both residents at the studio in Bath. So the title of the project and what I would have given it, I think, when I was initially beginning the project, is using digital technology to improve social equality in our cities. Having been spending almost, I don't know now, maybe almost 6 or 7, maybe 8 months working on this project, I think I'd reframe this not to exclude digital, but really that creativity is what we want to use to improve social inequality. And part of this project, it becomes apparent very quickly that digital technology also excludes people. And really, if we want to improve social equality, we can't just focus on digital technology. We need to think beyond that and think about how we engage, how we bring digital technology to people, but also how we engage with people who don't necessarily want to deal with digital technology. So this goal, Stupid Cities project, is an ambitious project. We want really a worldwide change in city design. Cities are broken across the world in the way that they are designed for access, and we really want to help change that. And also, in terms of technology, we don't want to just create technical tools that might help achieve this. We actually want people to own these tools and be able to use them playfully and misuse them and discover for themselves what they want to say through technology. This project started, I live in Bath, and I've started, I guess, taking just snapshots on my phone. I'm not really sure why, of just experiences I had using a wheelchair, moving through Bath. I still have no comprehension of like the thought process that went into whoever laid this out in Bath. It still bewilders me, but this action of taking a photograph, taking a snapshot, kind of has some degree of kind of cathartic release, or at least a sense of having some kind of voice or some kind of action that you can take against these, what I call microaggressions. There are microaggressions throughout Bath, throughout the world, throughout public space and the way things are designed. When I say microaggression, what I mean is simply something that tells you you don't belong in that space. So as a wheelchair user, it's very apparent to me how this layout, how even these temporary obstacles are telling me that I don't belong here. You know, the sign that's blocking the dip curb, the pavement that's too narrow to get through. I have to use the road, but the road is blocked. There is no proper dipped curb on the other side. All these things tell you that you don't belong. And I use the word micro, but I think it's worth reflecting that what I've witnessed and what I've, from speaking to other people, have learned is that all these risks that you have to take to overcome microaggressions or go around them, you normalize that behavior. And to me, using the road as a wheelchair user is normal. And I'm so used to it that I probably no longer really question it. So when something blocks my way and I have to use the road and I'm going past cars and they are dangerously close to me, I've normalized that. So I use the word micro, but really we are talking about dangerous factors in design that can kill. The kind of the issues that I'm talking about here are known and understood, and the solutions are known and understood. We are doing nothing new. I refer you to these 2 reports in 2017 and 19, which categorically state all of the problems, specifically in the UK, of the way that our cities are designed, specifically our public spaces. And then within the Transport Committee, specifically about how parking on pavements, which has just come up recently again, is a massive factor in excluding people from society by not being able to move through our public spaces. So we acknowledge things are broken and everything is known as to why it's broken. So really what we're here to do is to speak to people and try and understand how we can help deal with this broken system. We do this through the idea of capturing these, what I call microaggressions. This is based around using a phone app or a web app as well, which enables you just very quickly to take a snapshot of something that's, that causes you a difficulty in the way that you move through public space. And we also have sensor boxes, which I'll cover slightly later, exploring how technology and these sensors can kind of give us new ways to see cities and how we move through them. And like I said, challenge some of that ideas around normalized behavior. And then to share this information, specifically as a way of maybe affecting the way that people move through public space, but also as a way of feeling like you have a voice and you're not just suffering that parked car forcing you to use the road on your own silently, that actually people are aware of the problems that you're facing and a kind of that sense of community and help. And ultimately the most difficult and the thing that needs to happen the most is advocating for change. So we've been running this project, I think we kicked off around actually January of this year, pre-pandemic luckily. So we were running workshops in Bath and Bristol, really just trying to get feedback from people about their experiences and how they thought about public space. A big part of this was building up a taxonomy of what are the obstacles, or effectively, I guess, a taxonomy of microaggressions. What are the factors that people face? And trying to work out how we could categorize them if we want to create some data set which enables us to use this information to influence how people move through the public space. We need some way of trying to group it together. And like anyone knows who's ever tried to build a taxonomy, it's really hard. And these kind of three factors of build, environment, surface, and obstacles took actually a very long time, and speaking to a lot of people and doing a lot of interviews, trying to work out the categories of microaggressions in our build environment. Like I said early on, that I'm really thinking about creativity and not always just technology. Became very apparent quickly that the best way to get people to reflect on their relationship with public space, this example in Bath, was to have them draw on a map with pens and paper, removing any obstacles that might be apparent through technology and dealing with something that's much easier and actually very creative. And with this process of kind of putting stickers on maps, drawing on maps, what we encourage participants to do was to creatively, in any way they wanted, express problems and feelings that they had in certain areas in Bath. Again, kind of very focused on the idea that a lot of these experiences are normalized, and by finding a kind of a creative way of exploring them, we're helping discover information about bad design in Bath, but also what these workshops really started to feel like was, I guess, kind of like I say a kind of a group therapy session, as in everyone started sharing stories of experiences they had in Bath, and having a room of people listening and having the kind of creative outlet to, you know, my example, I draw a skull and crossbones on the map of one bit of Bath that I particularly dislike. It was a really an experience that I really valued, actually. And as that's again why I emphasize creativity when I talk about this project, because there isn't much technology involved here, but it was a really powerful way of learning and hearing disabled people's experiences of moving through public space. We've also run a lot of interviews and have a lot of content, which we're kind of all building up for our final exhibition, which we're going to show in April. But I just wanted to extract this kind of poem that started to get extracted from conversations we had with people. I'll just read it out so it's as accessible as possible. Here is a glitch in my city, unsafe in places I should feel safe, having to say thank you to people who are not listening. there's so much effort to participate, not knowing I can get in, I rule it out. And I have to say, a part of this project that I wasn't prepared for was the kind of the emotional weight of actually being like having these conversations with everyone, and every single person we spoke to had one or two sentences that part of these reflect that really just kind of knocked you over slightly and left you just having to take a moment to kind of really think about how I know that these microaggressions affect people moving public space, but just to hear people so eloquently express their opinions about how it was affecting them and how it's directly impacting their lives was powerful, and actually from my perspective quite a lot to take on, and I'm glad I had a team and lots of people to help support me with it as well. We are big believers in prototyping, and again, like the technology hasn't entered yet, because why, when we can use bits of card and bits of paper, it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot faster. So to kind of explore, working with John Summers, our UX designer, and Dave, who was also working us as a creative developer on this team, we started building models of obstacles and experiences in cities, just trying to imagine how an app or how a user might capture these experiences. You can kind of see down there in the bottom our very first prototype, which was kind of like a key ring stuck on a bit of card with some signs, and kind of the option to kind of categorize what this might feel like. This was kind of, we showed to workshop participants as well. It's just a really physical way of conveying what we're trying to do. And I felt like this was a really powerful way for us to explore how to capture these things and how we might design the system, but also it made it crystal clear to everyone involved, coming in off the street, not really knowing about our project, the sort of experiences we were trying to tackle. Again, like thinking, moving into paper prototypes, John, our UX designer, did a fantastic job of really trying to think through these flows of how we might capture a photo, how we might tag it on a map, what we might want to express about it. I think it's worth reflecting that, let's say something like in Snapchat or Instagram or some sort of social media, not always, but often that capture moment is kind of a joyful, creative moment, or a moment where you actively want to share something. But this app and our ideas exist in a moment of frustration and anger. And so it's absolutely critical that the flow and the app gets you through that as fast as possible with as little frustration as possible, and just giving you exactly just enough for you to be able to perhaps feel some sense of catharticism from actually kind of writing down maybe a story or some expression of how it made you felt. So again, we haven't even really touched on technology here, we're just dealing with paper. I'm going to jump forward slightly. These are the kind of the end designs. We're still kind of implementing these and still getting feedback on them, but this was inspired again by John, our UX designer, of trying to reevaluate how we see maps. A lot of information on maps is redundant. A lot of it is focused on businesses maybe, or on information that is more orientated towards advertising than actually about moving through public space. Also, the fact that our maps are road orientated, not pavement orientated, which just still floors me of a pedestrian moving through the public space. The maps that we have are designed for cars. So these designs are about having a very high contrast, about having a very strong visibility, but also removing noise from these maps. This was inspired by John's collaboration with a designer who specifically builds tactile maps, where they actually, I think this word embrace, I think, these kind of symbols on maps that effectively can be felt by anyone who has visual impairment. And we're really inspired by this kind of clean, high contrast way of creating a map that expresses, you know, there's stairs, there's dip curbs here, there's a narrow pavement here, the core information that might encourage people to move through public space more and find better routes that are less frustrating. So the project is about access. So obviously it's absolutely critical that the app is as accessible as possible. We've done a lot of work exploring different color variations to ensure that the contrast really works. I think one of the areas that we still need to do better on is there's lots of great guidelines around how maps can be presented textually. So you're not necessarily dependent on a visual layout of a map where you can actually have a text list of things that are near you that you can navigate through, specifically thinking about how maps work with visual impairment. It's like a big area that we want to try and dive into more, but we've really only just started to understand it really a lot through this process. So those beautiful designs don't exist yet, but we have built a prototype very early on that actually is there now live at alpha.stupidcities.com that can be used. This is just a very brief video to show you what it looks like. So this has a very default map at the moment. A lot of this map needs to change. What you see here are microaggressions recorded. Red being high levels of danger, amber kind of like medium, and green being happy and actually positive things. You can kind of scan around and move around this map. And then you also have the option, you have the option to tag, which is, I kind of tagline this of like the Instagram of bad design, where you can drop a pin on a specific spot. GPS is terrible, so it's really useful to be able to pick where, because we're dealing with very localized, very precise problems. Then just kind of uploading an image. It does some clever stuff around image uploading. Get to express like the feelings that you have, the categorization of it, so we can provide better data visualizations and impact journeys. But again, most importantly, this came afterwards of being able to add a story. We really want to use a lot of this data into creating exhibitions and performance pieces, and also the way to kind of advocate for change. Stories are very powerful ways to turn something quite abstract, a dot on a map, and a feeling, to really something quantifiable. Like I couldn't go to the GP surgery, or like I was nearly hit by a car. These things are important to capture, and my hope is that these will impact change. We also have this, I was going to use beautiful, but it doesn't feel appropriate to say beautiful, a collection of data of microaggressions that people have experienced. This is just a tiny subset of that data. I have some photos that are not just Bath based here. There's also some based in Stockholm, some across Sweden, as people have been kind of using the app to take photos. Again, I expressed at the beginning that we know what the problem is, and surprise, surprise, probably one of the biggest problems in microaggressions is cars parked on pavements. It's no surprise to us, but maybe what we're building here is an evidence base of how big the problem is. And even if it seems such a massive task to try and change government policy, the City of London already it's illegal to park on pavements. So maybe that's something we can advocate in the Southwest and try and promote and start to make movements towards the idea that actually parking on pavements endangers people's lives. Just going to grab water a second. Thanks. From speaking to our workshop participants, something that became apparent that we hadn't really thought about initially was that there isn't really any good map in Bath, in Bristol, and a lot of the UK of where there are dipped pavements. And obviously, myself as a wheelchair user, that actually has a radical impact on the journey and the path that I take. And we started also to look into gradients, because gradient often has a big effect, especially in a hilly city like Bath. How steep gradients are affects which paths you take. And to our surprise, we found that there wasn't really any great gradient information on Bath. Please correct me if you have information for that. I have been chasing and spoken to so many people, and I haven't yet been able to find that data set. But this project was an inspiration to us called Open Sidewalks, which is actually a US-based project. They have mapped, I think, Seattle, Washington, and a few other cities. And you can kind of see on this map here that the colors reflect the gradient. This has a route planning system built into it, so you can actually specify what gradients you can do going up and down. And what's really interesting is the red dashed dots and the slightly grayed out areas are junctions where there are not dipped curbs, and hence you may not pass that route. Having changed my route so radically, moving around in the US and going up and down hills and going into cities like San Francisco, these sort of maps are really powerful. But what we wanted to take from the Open Sidewalks project is that this data is actually stored inside OpenStreetMap, which is the largest, I guess, community-built map project where anyone can contribute data to it. And what they started to do, there's a lot of problems in the OpenStreetMap model still. Again, it's very road-centric rather than pavement-centric. We care about pavements more than roads. But they have started to add to this data set and also challenge the way that OpenStreetMap works slightly in being able to record where dip curbs are. And we kind of lockdown, the lockdown hit us back a lot in actually going out and moving through public space. But we started to just record on OpenStreetMap where there were dip curbs in Bath. And then using the technology of AccessMap, which is all open source again, this is all on GitHub, so you can go and look at AccessMap if you're interested in it. We generated these initial interactive maps that will provide routing considering dipped curbs through Bath. You can see we only have a small little chunk of data here. It's our ambition when we feel more confident and more able to move through public space to capture dip curbs. If anyone is interested and feels comfortable moving through public space right now, something you could do that would be interesting would be to take a look at OpenStreetMap and see how you can add dip curbs. That could be a really interesting way of contributing to this data set. And from the people we've spoken to, it genuinely is something that would improve people's confidence to go out about in Bath. So the bit of the project that I haven't really touched on that I've kind of started to talk about with gradients in Bath and the fact that no one really has this information, we started to play around with sensors that we attach to a wheelchair that give us some sort of measurements on what surfaces and what gradients might be like. This is the very first ever prototype, which is absolutely terrible. And it was bad, but it's just me sitting on an iPad with the camera pointing at the ground. Yeah, I did this once and never again. We improved. This again was a while ago, back early this year. This is an Arduino. Do I remember which Arduino that is? It's an Arduino with an IMU with a gyroscope and an accelerometer attached to a desktop webcam. And then those cables go into my backpack, plugged into a laptop that's just streaming the data off them. Again, this is completely unfeasible for like you to give to anyone to use. And the plastic bag only came later after having get one of the Arduinos wet. But this was like the first time to actually kind of create something that shared data. So you have kind of the webcam looking down on the surface, you have a GPS that's giving a map, and you have some very raw accelerometer and gyroscope. If you're not familiar, an accelerometer, a gyroscope is going to effectively measure the incline, and the accelerometer is really best at measuring vibration. We've improved a lot since then. This wonderful little orange box has a GPS plugged in, has a accelerometer and a gyroscope. It's really small, it's really light. We've been using Velcro and it's a lot less obtrusive. Effectively, sticking that on somewhere underneath on one of the bars of the wheelchair or one of the structures of the wheelchair with Velcro means it's really easy to attach. The nice thing with this one is it doesn't rely on a camera either, so you can actually attach it anywhere on the wheelchair. And this gives us, again, gradients and bumpiness of surfaces. Dave, one of the creatives and also resident at the studio in Bath we've been working with. Again, this was during lockdown, so we were very restricted about how we could all meet up and try and give Dave something to more prototype with. So fantastic Dave actually built some Lego slopes. I just play a little video. These are obviously completely non-world simulations, as in the ramp is disproportionate to the wheels. But this was our first chance at having like a wireless device that was gathering.
Here we've got a slope. It's not in proportion with the
Turn the
wheels.
volume down here so I can talk a bit. Yeah, and the beauty of these devices is also, I think this one was £10. which is really, really nice price point. I think we bought about 10 of these to play with at workshops. And there he's kind of building a gradient ramp. And the most important thing, and we started to realize playing with accelerometers and gyroscopes and wheelchairs, is that the wheels have a massive impact on how easy it is to regard a slope. So these very exaggerated slopes, we're getting pretty good slope curves. But the challenge that we will have and still thinking about is that different size vehicles, different mobility devices will have different profiles, and how they rank gradients is a challenge. I think what we're starting to think now is that when we want to record every dipped curve in Bath, by having this device, we can have something where someone can press a button on it, go down a slope, a dipped curve, go up a dipped curve, be in a safe space on the pavement, and then be able to look at the box. The box has a little screen, and we can kind of bucket those curves based on, like extremely steep, mild, very flat. Okay, I'll just skip. Okay, this one. Yeah. So I've said kind of one of our project goals was kind of creativity and ownership of technology. And I have a real contentious relationship with the way technology is often framed with disability as kind of like this solution or this magical thing that somehow means society doesn't have to change to tackle the barriers that it's created that create disability. So as part of our workshops, we wanted to use these devices that could be used to capture this gradient information as playful, expressive ways to explore movement. So Dave built a whole bunch of open source. You can view the sketches, kind of processing P5 sketches that use the gyroscope and the accelerometer to effectively creative movement. So we could attach these to the wheelchairs, and as we move around the space, we're controlling the various visualizations. This was just a lot of fun and was a really nice way to introduce these little boxes of technology in a very creative way. You can also take the case off these and plug these in and flash them yourself. So it is a very playful way of exploring technology. This is a prototype that's slightly more advanced. I'm still trying to work on this one, and I don't know how. I still got a bunch of issues with clearance and the fitting of this, but this represents perhaps the most advanced of the prototypes we got. So this is a depth camera, specifically a RealSense depth camera. After speaking to a few companies who are doing mappings via cars and people walking around with backpacks of our public space, it became very apparent that if we really want to go down the path of having high precision mapping of what a pavement is, a depth sensor that measures how far away objects are rather than necessarily a flat photo image is the way to do this. And I've just been firstly exploring non-obtrusive ways that I can attach one of these to a wheelchair that I can still actually get to. The main issue this has still is clearance. It sticks out just a bit too much. I'm still trying to work it out, but this is something we're exploring. This enables to get some really interesting shots of Bath. This is attached to my wheelchair. This I find fascinating as well. As a person who did this journey, it gives me a way to reevaluate through technology, find a new way of seeing how I'm interacting in this public space. And a lot of the things, this was also in a COVID time as well, so my behavior is different than I would normally be doing. But it gives us kind of a way of changing the way I potentially behave with these sensors on, where I decide to go, how I decide to challenge my environment, and places I might not go that I am encouraged to go because I feel like I'm actually doing something valuable in capturing this data. But also just the way to explore perhaps what's implicit in my mind about the way I move through space that might not be obvious to other people. I'll stop, but this goes on for a full hour as I go through Bath. And I just have to say this part, in terms of microaggressions and in terms of surfaces and in terms of bike collisions as well, this actually is one of the hot spots of Bath, just around the corner past the Holborn, if you're interested. This is just a little bit of footage and a box of the RealSense sensor. It's got a Raspberry Pi plugged into the depth sense camera. I just wanted to give you a shot in case you weren't aware what a depth sensor camera is. Again, using an open source, playful bit of technology, the Raspberry Pi can be unplugged, plugged into your TV, plug a keyboard into it, and you have a computer that you can play around with. Again, this idea that we want people that are using these boxes to open them up and play with them and use them how they want to use them. So I'll just run this little depth camera. So the depth camera, most importantly, will pick out, for example, if I'm scanning myself there, you get the different positions in the Z-axis of what obstacles in front of the camera. But what this matters to us, which I still need to do field trials on, is if I shine this at a dipped curb, is this a good way of me measuring how deep a curb is? Is this way of me of measuring where the pavement's too narrow, of actually knowing how narrow it is? The information here we get is really dense. The reason I have so many different prototypes I'm talking about here is because I feel this is possibly the solution for getting high resolution, accurate data on public space, but it's also more expensive and has more limitations that way. And I want to make sure that whatever we offer to people, we have a broad spectrum of solutions. That means as many people as possible can get to play with these technologies. As COVID hit, and as our project really kind of hit a bit of a grind, as myself and my co-director Ruby started having to do full-time childcare and the schools being closed, we hit a real difficult time in the project, and we decided that we wanted to run 3 micro grants as part of our project that are going to be shown in April as part of our final showcase. I think as a way of engaging with more artists who identify as disabled to talk about accessibility and the problems they want to talk about helping support the disability community during COVID. There are lots of very scary stats around the fact how disabled people have experienced and have a higher risk in COVID that really concerned us. And really kind of going back to that creativity thing, this whole project is a social arts project about using creativity and encouraging creativity to challenge and talk about access. I just, again, want to read this beautiful poem by Gili. I think it captures a lot. So it's not selfish to want access. I arrive at the therapist's office. I thought I checked. I thought I made sure. Before me lies a single step. It said accessible. I'm sure of it. I'm here to vent my frustrations about ableism and feel like a fool. Do I walk away? Do I confront her? Why is the emotional labor always up to me? So much adrenaline coursing through me. My palms are sweaty, heart racing, pounding loudly in my ears, all over one step. To you, dear reader, if I walk over it, everything I've come to talk about becomes trivial. Endless loops, tangles, and knots, on the verge of a meltdown as I walk away. £50 poorer because the cancellation fee still applies. Nothing to show for it but this angst. We worked with 3 artists over this time, not all necessarily complete yet, will all be part of our showcase. This was a really cool piece by Rosen, who is doing a piece called Some Punks Need to Sit Down at Gigs, which is an awesome title for a project. It was all about tackling access in music venues. And she's building a zine exploring some of the experiences in music venues and how those music venues might be able to improve the access and the number of people who can participate in a music venue. The final one I want to mention is Claire Finmore. She has created a dramatized play, again, a fantastic title called Started Early, Took My Guide Dog, which we're hoping to get recorded and again will be part of our April showcase. And these artists will get a chance to talk about access and disability in the medium and the way that they want to. The most exciting and the bit that's most undeveloped from our project, because we've been so blocked by COVID, but I'm really getting tackled into now. I kind of mentioned that we are taking all these interviews that we have been doing with participants. We are taking all these maps that we've been building digitally and physically and building a projection structure. This is the very first prototype of me shining a light through these maps. The idea being that we are going to create a large sculpture which will consist of slides of maps capturing different people's experiences of access through Bath. And the idea being that all these layers, where there is access, the light will shine through. Where there is no access or bad microaggressions, no light will shine through. And we will use this as a projection piece where we will shine it on the floor of the streets of Bath, really trying to make visible what accessibility is like in the city of Bath and our streets. But that is to come. And if you're interested, please look out for the showcase in April. I'm so excited to put this together, and we are really excited to continue working on it. And yeah, so that is me. I hope I've given you like an interesting summary of our project. We're still working on it. We still have a lot we want to achieve. A lot needs to be done about access in Bath. Thanks again to Bath Digital and all the sponsors and partners who have enabled us this platform to talk about our work. I hope that was useful and engaging. And yeah, if you have any questions or wish to ask anything, I guess the time is now. I understand you don't have to ask questions. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Opened, no displayed. I'm quite happy if there aren't questions as well, because I am very tired. I'll give it a couple of minutes. If there's no questions, then I will say goodbye and thanks for being a part. Let's see, so Carolyn West, these are wonderful ways of highlighting the issues, but is there a way to make a change, e.g. get the cars off the pavement? That's a very good question. I mean, yes, change the law. So as part of the government reevaluation of parking on pavements, what they are asking is for people to give evidence as to how this is impacting their lives. So a large part of the data set we're collecting that has cars parked on pavements and stories and people's experiences is the thing we send to effectively the committee that is responsible for that as a piece of evidence to say, this is affecting people's lives. The problem we have is that in a lot of the way that government policy and planning is done, if your voice is not heard, you don't exist. So my hope is that we're amplifying the evidence that pavement parking is a problem. There are other ways that I have been exploring this, but are still testing out, So for example, we've been playing around with putting stickers and warnings and notes on cars that are parked on the pavement. We found that a lot of people who park on pavements are just not aware of the impact they're having in people's lives. And we've heard from a lot of people how putting a note or putting these stickers that we've created about no access on a car, and then actually me being an artist, I'm sitting around and waiting until the person comes back and engaging with them in a dialogue about it. That often, not always, but often people are quite ashamed in their behavior and not realizing. And once that switch flicks in their brain that they know that this is impacting people's lives, they hopefully don't do it in the future and are really aware of finding a new way of seeing the city and seeing what those things mean to people who need to move through it. So I hope, Catherine, yeah, I really want this to change. I think with the new review coming, I hope it will. It's a contentious issue is the problem, because there are a lot of cars in Bath specifically, and there is a real tension between where people park and what pavements are for. I hope we're going to make a difference there, but it is a big thing. And if you want to get involved, I highly recommend looking at the new House of Lords reporting committee that's ongoing now, that was kicked off about 2 months ago, about investigating it. I hope that answers your question, Catherine. Yeah, getting cars off pavements is what I want as well. Thanks for the feedback, people. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for questions. That looks all nice. I'm glad to see people are asking questions. Cool. Yeah, thanks very much. It's nice to hear there are voices in the silence of this presentation. Very strange speaking to myself. Cool. On that note, then I'll say, let me just check I didn't miss anything. I think I actually have to do, I did answer live, and that one. Yeah, I think that's enough. I think I've gone through some questions, given enough people have time. So thank you very much. Listen out for the project Stupid Cities. We are on www.stupidcities.com and talk about all our work there. And we're really interested in engaging with anyone who wants to talk about these issues and be a part of our project. So thank you.